All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Think about the sheer scale of European finance for a second. We're talking about a sector that manages over 100 trillion euros in assets and processes more than 400,000 transactions every single day. But with that massive scale comes an equally massive, incredibly complex cybersecurity challenge. Today we're exploring a completely groundbreaking approach to defending this critical infrastructure.
Now, with that kind of scale comes a giant target on your back. The European financial sector has been hit with a staggering 238% spike in cyberattacks since 2020 alone. To put that into perspective, this sector faces roughly 3 times the attack volume of the next most targeted industry. Literally, 3 times.
But here's the kicker, and it's honestly a bit shocking. We've got all these sensors and data collectors in place, right? Yet traditional enterprise security systems, your standard SIEMs, are only catching about 21% of known MITRE attack techniques. That's essentially the standard playbook of known hacker behaviors, and we're missing almost 80% of it. The data is pouring in, but the true threats are just slipping right through the cracks.
And honestly, is it any surprise the human element is just completely burning out? Because of all this overwhelming noise, 2 out of 3 security operations center teams simply cannot keep up with the daily avalanche of incoming alerts. There is a fundamental lack of time and human capacity to manually comb through millions of signals every single day.
So the real bottleneck inside these financial institutions isn't a lack of data. Not at all. It's a severe lack of reasoning capacity to make sense of it all. Most breaches actually trigger alerts long before the real damage happens, but they just get buried in the noise and never investigated. That's exactly why hacker dwell times are still measured in months. We just can't reason across all these chaotic signals fast enough.
To see how we actually solve this, today's explainer is going to cover the reasoning bottleneck, why narrow AI fails, the CyberAI platform itself, the agent team behind it, and finally, some real-world financial defenses. Starting off with the reasoning bottleneck. Look, as we just established, throwing more sensors or collecting more data won't cure SOC fatigue. The human analysts are already pushed to the absolute limit. What we actually need is a way to automate the reasoning process itself. Which brings us to why narrow AI fails. You're probably thinking, well, why not just plug ChatGPT or some other large language model directly into the system to fix this, right? It sounds easy, but the short answer is a hard no. And understanding why is absolutely crucial for financial security.
Sure, large language models can pull off some brilliant isolated party tricks. They can autonomously exploit 87% of one-day vulnerabilities from text or hit a near-perfect 0.97 score on intrusion detection. But those narrow wins, they do not constitute a platform. A real security platform for a bank has to compose across multiple functions, maintain multi-tenant state, map findings to strict regulatory regimes like Europe's DORA or the EU AI Act, and generate audit-grade artifacts. A monolithic LLM bolted onto an existing legacy system simply does none of those things.
So let's get into the actual solution, the CyberAI platform. This is a comprehensive, hybrid, multi-agent architecture built from the ground up for financial critical infrastructures. And crucially, it's meant to be installed directly inside the institution, not as some generic cloud copilot.
The core philosophy here is something called hybrid grounding. We aren't throwing away the classical SCM and XDR tools you already have. Instead, think of those existing systems as the sensory organs. They gather all that high-throughput data and give us a stable ground truth. Then, the LLM agent layer steps in as the analytical brain, actively reasoning over that exact telemetry to connect the dots across domains and explain it all in plain English.
Let's see how this all stacks up. Building from the foundation at Layer 4, you start with your standard integration and messaging bus, your existing security stack. Moving up one level to Layer 3, you've got the knowledge and inference layer, packed with private LLMs and partition vector stores. Above that in Layer 2 is the real magic, the shared multi-agent runtime where all our AI specialists actually collaborate. And capping it all off at Layer 1 is the presentation layer, making sure human analysts are always kept in the loop and in total control.
Moving on to the agent team itself. If we zoom in on that shared runtime layer, it's completely different from a typical AI setup. Instead of relying on one massive, monolithic brain trying to juggle everything, this architecture operates exactly like a highly specialized, mature human security team. At the center of it all is the Central Router Agent, or CRA. Think of it as the ultimate dispatcher. When an event happens, the CRA instantly delegates tasks out to specialized agents.
You've got a behavioral analysis agent hunting for weird user activity, a compliance agent cross-checking regulations like GDPR, and an incident response agent spinning up containment playbooks, all working in parallel. And because they share the exact same security context, they can actively collaborate to investigate threats as a cohesive unit.
But we know trust in banking has to be engineered. You can't just assume it. That's why the platform features strictly bounded autonomy across 3 distinct human-in-the-loop tiers. Tier 1 handles fully autonomous, reversible stuff, like auto-blocking a known malicious IP. Tier 2 hits the brakes on ambiguous cases so a human analyst can review them. And Tier 3? That demands explicit human sign-off for any high-severity actions, like pulling a critical server offline. Everything gets recorded in an append-only audit log, keeping everything perfectly in line with tight oversight rules, like DORA and the EU AI Act.
All right, let's take all this theory and ground it in reality. Let's look at how this multi-agent team defends actual financial infrastructure.
Imagine a private banking scenario. How does this hybrid brain actually stop a sophisticated fraudster trying to steal millions? Picture a scammer sending an email that perfectly impersonates a wealthy client, asking for a massive fund transfer, but purposefully keeping the amount just a hair below the bank's automatic verification threshold.
The literal second that suspicious transfer instruction hits the system, a shared security context spins up. The central router agent immediately fires off the behavioral, threat, compliance, and response agents. Working in parallel, they scrutinize the writing style, rip apart the email headers, and check compliance rules. They roll all of this up into a highly detailed, confidence-scored evidence bundle. And based on that specific score, a human gatekeeper makes the final call. Auto-approve, flag for a deeper look, or just outright block the transaction.
And here is where it becomes a real game changer for the whole industry. Thanks to a concept called federated defense, smaller institutions can literally inherit advanced detection patterns from the big global banks. By using privacy-preserving cryptography, banks can share the collective intelligence of their agents, like new behavioral baselines and detection rules, without ever exposing a single byte of raw customer data. It's all about sharing knowledge, not data.
Take another massive headache: anti-money laundering. Traditional static rules are failing up to 95% of the time because today's criminals are just too agile and easily evade them. The CyberAI platform ditches those static rules for dynamic transaction graphs. It maps out connections across e-wallets, card payments, and bank accounts in real time, successfully catching those hyper-complex structuring and layering techniques that older static rules simply miss entirely. To make all this even more bulletproof, the platform supports some incredible pluggable technologies. You can spin up a digital twin to let AI safely red team a virtual clone of your network. You can tap into eBPF telemetry for incredibly deep, sub-second visibility at the operating system level, without slowing down your production servers one bit. Or, for those massive bank-to-bank transfers, you can even integrate quantum tokens using the literal laws of physics to guarantee unforgeable two-factor authentication.
As we look ahead to making these agents even more adaptable with specialized skill packages, I want to leave you with this final thought. The big takeaway from this explainer is that the future of financial security isn't about hoarding more data, and it's definitely not about standalone AI party tricks. It's about engineering true trust through hybrid multi-agent systems and sharing that automated reasoning to protect the entire ecosystem. So the question is, are we ready to make that leap?